Welcome back to another edition of Check Call. Don't forget to subscribe to Check Call, the newsletter, on FreightWaves.com if you haven't already. Today we are welcoming Dan Tram, CEO and founder of Everest AI. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Thanks so much for having me, Mary. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm excited for today because we have talked about AI a lot on this show, a lot, especially in the last few weeks, and we've kind of talked about different use cases for it and kind of how do you know that it's time. Well, not necessarily how you know it's time to get involved, but basically the solutions that it solves. But we haven't really come back into the implementation side of things, and we're going to cover that today. But before we get too far into it, let's get some background on you and kind of how you got started at Everest, or how you started Everest.
For sure. My journey began with a deep passion for technology and logistics that led me to working at Volvo Group, the truck manufacturer. So there I spent time talking to everybody and everyone in logistics, from drivers to operations managers to executives of large companies, all the way to owners of smaller companies. And I was fascinated by how AI can revolutionize the logistics industry. So with my background, I saw a significant gap in how brokers, carriers, and 3PL manage their communication, especially when it comes to emails. So this led me to start Everest. We use AI to streamline email for logistics companies, making their day-to-day work more efficient and customer interactions more effective.
I absolutely love that. As a former freight broker who got far too many emails every day, being able to kind of have some of them. I mean, I guess, do you guys have stuff that like kind of automates a response if someone's just like, I want a rate quote, and it kind of like, does it do that part for them? Or is it even something as simple as like, oh, I need the phone number for the warehouse on this BOL? Like, does it like respond for people?
It can, if people, depending on what people need, but it can do automated responses. Um, and we'll get into that a little bit more later, I'm sure, but it can be anywhere from responses, but also data collection. Because today, in email, there's so much valuable information that sales leaders and owners can use, but we don't sit there and record how many emails we send per day, what the rate was in the email that we send. But today, with AI, that's something that we can do. So imagine you having a person in an office sitting and reading the emails that go out every time and say, oh, this is a rate quote, this is how much you quoted, this is the customer, and then they write that down. But instead of writing it down, obviously now it's recorded, and then it could be uploaded into your TMS or wherever you want to keep your records.
I'm not gonna lie, that seems like a much better use of time than having someone who literally just sat there and goes through like each email being like, oh, finally got a lane to rate. Okay, do we win it or not? That seems like a perfect use case for AI and machine learning.
Yeah, we we like to we like to say AI. We like to call it an assistant because that's what it is at the end of the day. And today, I think freight brokers or dispatch managers or dispatchers, they're very busy doing multiple things at the same time. Like everything flows into the email, goes to different places. But imagine a world where every single one of those people in the office had an assistant to simplify the mundane task. So to enable to do things that AI can't do, for example, call a driver, talk to a customer, deal with problems, right? Those are things that AI really can't solve because it's a human touch that's so important in logistics. So we hope to make the mundane tasks easier, have the harder tasks that requires human interactions, let the humans continue to do that. That's what we're good at.
First of all, having an assistant would be top tier, especially if you don't have to pay for it. But like you don't have to pay like a salary for an assistant. But so recently we have talked about all the different ways that AI can be used in brokerages, anywhere from, kind of harvesting data to, crunching through some numbers and some different rate quotings and all those different applications. But when it comes to the implementation aspect of it, I don't feel like that really gets talked about a lot. So I know that AI kind of feeds off of what you feed into it. So, how do you even kind of go about getting started with that? Like, do you just kind of plug it essentially? I know it's more sophisticated than this, but for those of us who are not integration inclined, you plug it in and then do you just start dumping emails? Do you start dumping historic data into it? How do you even know where to start?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think also that will depend on the use case. For an assistant that is in your email, there's not much you have to do than just start working with it, and it gets better and learns over time. And if you work with companies who have experience in this area already, maybe their AI assistant don't need a lot of training to begin with because it already understands the context of logistics. In other areas for data collection, maybe you want to feed it some historical data for 3, 6, or 1 year so it can train based off of that. So it really depends on the use case and what you're trying to achieve with AI. All that said, I think one very important part of implementation is the people aspect. Because when you use AI, depending on how you use it, especially with something like an assistant, now it's somebody that helps you day to day. You want to get used to how you work with an AI as you would work with a person, right? There's a time that you use to getting to know each other, how you work with each other, and hopefully together you're better than you would be by yourself, right? So people, very important part of it, training people, getting people used to it, informing people, letting them know that, well, AI is not here to replace your job. It's going to make us as a team more effective and you more effective as well.
I think that that is something that is absolutely very important, of just kind of making sure that you are using the best to your ability, and making sure that, because a lot of what we've learned a lot over the past few weeks is that, you get out of an AI what you put into it. And so if you're not necessarily putting quality things in, it's one of those where everyone has such high hopes for it and saying, oh, it's going to come in and solve everything. But I think we often kind of overlook that learning period of, okay, you have this software and it's programmed to do something, but it still has to do something based off those inputs that you give it. And so I almost kind of think that for a while it's kind of one of those, you almost, I don't want to say you have to babysit it, but you kind of have to just say like, okay, if I put this input in, are you going to give me the right output? And you have to have someone to sit there and say, yes, this is the right output, or no, I need it to be this, or no, you're almost there, I need this. And I feel like that's often something that's kind of forgotten when you're kind of road mapping in a integration, is just that it's more than just that training and that development or the test environment. It actually is a matter of like, okay, we've gone live, but we have to make sure that it's putting out what we're asking it to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a big part of that too is that when it comes back to the people part that you mentioned, that well, train the people so they know from the get-go what this will achieve and what we are trying to achieve as a team together. And setting those metrics and goals is important because then we can measure it. Then your team knows how to use it. Your team doesn't have to be scared that they're going to lose jobs because they won't. The AI is not there yet. We're many, many years away. But at the end of the day, logistics is such a relationship-driven business that if you don't have relationships in freight, then I think that's maybe you should use AI so you can focus on the relationship in freight. So even better for you to actually get AI and implement them into your business.
Yeah, I think that that is something that it's I've kind of seen it, and we've talked about it as like it's a tool to help you automate what you don't like. And so if you hate taking signed BOLs and attaching them back to the shipments that you've done as a broker, or if you're the data entry person and you really hate going in and assigning things to a load, those are very easy things that you can teach an AI to look for. And that way you're just managing the exceptions and you're not spending all day sitting there going, hey, I need you to do this, I need you to do this. It's kind of automating those things that you don't like and that are very manual. And that way you're just working the exceptions, you're working the problems instead of the day to day, because that way it kind of lets you put out fires before they become forest fires.
Exactly. I think that's a great way to put it, right? It really helps you with your mundane tasks. And that's very much at the front line. The interesting part with AI too is that if you work with companies that are able to provide analytics, right? That's something that we do for our customers, is that they provide the mundane tasks. And that could be, quoting or reading BOLs. But then the other aspect of that is the data entry and data collection. But those two things can happen at the same time. So now it's not only providing mundane tasks, but getting data off of that and understanding that. And now that data and analytics, now AI can start providing recommendations for management teams on where to sell, looking at win-loss ratio, who to sell to, how to grow your business, how people are performing in the company. information that we didn't really have access to before.
And that's something that I think is one of those, not necessarily like unknown benefits, because like obviously it's known, but it's one of those that's going to come later. Like those are going to be those benefits that come after the immediate ones of, maybe so many people got some time back in their day. For a broker to get back an hour in a day would be completely game changing, because that's potentially more time they could be out there selling or acquiring more freight. But I think that over the long term, it's not just a quick return on investment of like, oh, we put this money in and now 20 people have gotten an hour back in their day, or this department is this much more efficient. There's more to be gained the further it goes and the more data it puts in, because obviously you get in what you put out of it. Or you get out what you put into it. When it comes to like, so how long, if I'm a freight broker and I just put in a brand new AI assistant software, and I have made the step and we are putting some stuff in and we're getting the results that we want, how long is it? Like a couple weeks, a couple months, 6 months, a year? How long does it take for me to kind of see those tangible benefits of that integration? Is it something as soon as I could figure out in a day, or is it kind of more of that like couple months out thing?
I think we like to share that it will take you anywhere from 1 to 3 months to start seeing benefits. And a lot of that is just, again, back to the team getting used to it. And once they're used to working with an assistant, having them help them every day, now they are more effective. And I think between a 3 to 6 month period, you start to see tangible benefits, right? That you can see, oh, I'm doing better now than I was doing before.
I think that that's something that I don't even know that a lot of freight brokers even have the ability to know where they are at right now. Because if you're thinking about something to compare it to after a while, I think it's one of those that, like, how do you even know other than, oh, I spend all 8 hours of the day on this one thing, and now I guess I'm only spending six. I wouldn't even know how you would begin to quantify that.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, right? Because we don't really think about that. We think about the loads we need to move, the exceptions we need to manage, and the fires we need to put out. Um, but with something, and all the communication that we do on all those three topics happen to be in the email. And today is very hard to measure email. There's no way for us of doing that. That's why implementing AI into your email flow is a very good way of doing that, because now you can see how much time you're spending on different tasks, how fast you're responding to customers. Important one that I mentioned earlier, which is measuring your win-loss ratios, like how many times you're emailing a customer for them to actually email you back for you to win that quote. How much time are you spending on your top customers? Maybe you're spending too much time with some of them, right? Maybe you should focus on your fifth customer. There's a lot of opportunity there. Just all that data, not even just looking at the metrics of it, but imagine if you have a data analyst that one looks at all of that, collects that information for you, looks at that, and it comes back to you, owner or sales manager, saying, hey, here are your top 10 customers. This is where you should focus your effort for these reasons. Here are your reps, this is how they're performing. Here's the data on that. That's pretty unique and amazing, and something that we weren't able to do before because the technology didn't exist to create the structure out of unstructured data that exists in email.
If there's like I mean, I'm sure you probably know the answer, or another freight brokerage would know the answer. And that is, I wonder if there's like a correlation between this is how long it takes us to respond to an email versus this is our win-loss ratio. Because if I have an email assistant that immediately, if it's like, because we all know in freight brokerage, speed is like 90% of like how fast can you come with the right price and how fast you can get it to me. And even then, if you're faster than the other guy and you're close enough, you're still going to win. So I wonder if there's like if that's like another coaching point that can be introduced is, your email response rate versus your win rate. And I feel like that's got to be something that is pretty easily implemented and discovered, right?
Absolutely. And that's what we do for our customers in our analytics platform that we share to managers and owners that they use to coach their team. In this market of freight, customer service, customer service is directly correlated with how fast you respond. Customers think about fast response time as good customer service. It might not be exactly what I want, but just replying saying, hey, I'm on it, that is good enough. And that is measured. And then you can now start looking at the reps that have fast response time versus how are they doing on win loss versus their margin and seeing the correlation there. Absolutely.
So when it comes to kind of implementing things, and we've talked about different ways that data can be used and analyzed and everything like that, what do you think are some of the common issues that you see kind of go awry when it comes to implementing new, either whether it's technology, just any kind of technology, or AI or anything? What are some of those common pitfalls you see when people try to implement some AI?
I think the most common pitfall that I see is just change management. And this obviously assumes that the team you're working with have a lot of experience in AI, deploying, implementing, and understanding how it works. I think that's crucial. Select your team that come from big companies that have done this before. Assuming that that's all clear, when you start working with a team, ultimately the people on the it's ultimately the people in the front line that will be using it. Do they understand how to use it? Do they understand the limitations, how it's going to help them? And just getting them used to the day-to-day operations. We talk about these mundane tasks that can be automated. That's great. Uh, Maybe 90% of it can be automated. Maybe that 10% can't. But just letting them know what that 10% is, and so they can get used to that, that will make them more effective. The alternative is if they think it's going to do everything for them and it doesn't, now they get disappointed, they get frustrated, and then they want nothing to do with it.
I feel like change management is the most professional way of just saying manage your expectations accordingly.
I think that's fair.
I think that that is honestly in any kind of integration for anything, whether it's AI or just, we got a new appointment scheduling tool. I think that that change management is one of the most undervalued things because it's literally all about, because nobody likes to change. Nobody likes to alter how they do it. It's been working like this forever. Why do we need to change it? Why do we need all this other stuff? And I think that's where that change management part really comes in and can be the make or break difference for ultimately success or a failure of an integration. Because if it's just going to make things more complicated and there's not really a lot of training or other things, I think that is literally like over half the battle is just kind of getting people on board and getting that change management under control.
Yeah. We talk a lot about how talent and people is so important because it is. That's what builds our businesses, drives our businesses, especially important in freight. And new technologies, that's great. They're not going to replace those people, but it is important to get that talent and the people who run the businesses as a part of the journey, because that will be critical. Once you have that, I think the rest will become a lot easier.
100%. Speaking of things that could become easier, this is not easy. This is going to probably be the hardest question that you've gotten all day today, but it's one that everybody that comes on the show has to answer. And Dan, you, sir, are no exception. So without further ado, is a hot dog a sandwich?
Great question. So, as a logistics professional, I would say that a hot dog itself is the cargo that requires a temperature controlled transportation, and the bun happens to be the method of transportation. That said, I do think that all hot dogs are sandwiches, but all sandwiches are not hot dogs because all the content in the sandwiches are not always hot.
I have to say that is the first time someone's ever broken it down like that, and I love your dedication to it. I'm team hot dog is not a sandwich, so I do not agree with your final conclusion. However, I do like how you arrived at that conclusion. Specifically, also as the cold chain show host, we love any time that we get to work in a temperature controlled situation.
Yep, yep. Plug for your other podcast.
All right, Dan. Thank you so much for joining us today. If someone has any questions about, implementing AI or the email software we've talked about today, or even your hot dog as a sandwich, where can they find you outside the show?
You can visit my LinkedIn, Dan Tram, or website, useeverest.com, or send me an email at dan@useeverest.com.
Awesome. You guys heard it here first. There are many ways to contact Dan. I highly encourage you to have all of them, and you too can have a laugh and a good time chatting with Dan because you're a very nice person to chat to, Dan.
Thanks, Mary. You too. Great to be here.
You can find other episodes of Check Call the Podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Don't forget to check out all the other incredible FreightWaves shows, and don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/checkcall. See you on the internet.